presentation that I built here. So why don't we switch over there to the presentation in the background? Okay. Can you see it
By the
now?
way, I
So
don't know what just happened, but your audio became very more full and it sounds really good now. It sounds better than it did 2 minutes ago.
that's interesting. That's real interesting. Oh, you know what it is? Yep. Logan muted his mic. That helped out because his mic is probably picking up in my mic again or something like that. Yep, that's what
Yeah,
it
I
is.
think you're right
Okay.
because you
Okay.
you sound now
That's good.
very
Well, tomorrow
very
we'll have
clear.
to keep his off. Then, yeah. Okay. Sounds good. All right. Well, okay. Here we go. So, all right, Dan, let me walk you through what I built right here. All right. So, we're going to discuss how we're going to build the next multi-trillion-dollar market cap company. So, who wants to see how we're going to build it? All right. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take $150 million and turn it into $15 billion and a 10x exit strategy. And I apologize now. It's going to take a little bit to go through this, but okay. But opportunities like this, they don't come around, very often. It's kind of like a once in a lifetime deal. So I think it's worth the, 15 or 20 minutes it's going to take to run through this. So we'll run through it pretty quickly. All right. So it sounds impossible, but it's not. I promise you. Okay. So two things have stood the test of time: commodities and money. They've lasted thousands of years. So if you're going to build the next $1 trillion market cap company, I think it would be pretty prudent to build it with a commodity and the future of money. And that's what we have kind of built this concept on. So what is the most profitable bank in the world worth? Well, that produces its own money, lends the money it produces, infinitely scalable to the world, unlimited demand for the product, for money that has a limited supply. So let me ask you again. A Bitcoin-backed mining. Oh man, I got some of these slides out of order. I moved them around. I'm gonna have to fix that. Okay, so that last one, I copied them, and some of the text copied over onto them. Okay, so a Bitcoin-backed mining bank of the future will far surpass our goals because the two things that it's founded on is a commodity and money, the two things that will stand the test of time. That was the part that got duplicated again. Okay, so the next slide. So this is how it's built. We're not only going to produce the commodity, but then we're going to refine it, productize it, sell it, and then do it all over again in an infinite loop, spinning off Bitcoin dividends every quarter to the investment group, scaling it up over 4 years to prepare for one of three exit strategies of an IPO, a sale, or a recapitalization for those that might want to do it. So we could either keep it, spin it off as IPO, or just sell it to someone that just really wants it. Okay, so let me show you how we're going to do it. But before we do, I need to explain a few things in how Bitcoin mining works. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Marathon Digital. They go by the stock ticker MARA, commonly referred to as MARA. So I need to explain real quickly how they work. And then after we look at MARA, we're going to look at MicroStrategies. But as far as MARA goes, the production of Bitcoin by a public miner, so it causes them to sell off about 45% of the produced Bitcoin to cover electricity and overhead. So all those big salaries and all that stuff, they for every one Bitcoin that they generate, they're selling nearly half of it to cover their costs. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But if you have an operating company and the profits of the operating company cover the electricity costs and the overhead cost of the production of the Bitcoin, you can produce Bitcoin at zero cost. See, but you're only limited to the size of the profit of the operating company for the amount of Bitcoin that you can produce. So you're kind of
So in other
locked
words,
in.
the cost of Bitcoin doesn't change. It's the revenue to pay for the cost of Bitcoin changes.
Yeah, so in this example right here, if we had an operating company, and it could be anything, it could be a donut shop or anything, and your operating costs were 55% and your margin was 45%, the profit that you had of that 45%, well, if you were producing Bitcoin, would cover all of your cost in the production of the Bitcoin and yield you one full Bitcoin, which is a lot more profit than you just independently running your operating company, right? Because now you have the whole value of the Bitcoin. If that was $100,000, so if we're just using 100,000 as the example right here, you would have took an operating company that made $45,000 and turned it into $100,000 of Bitcoin. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, but what we're limited by, though, is the profit of the operating company. So the only way to get more Bitcoin would be to increase the profitability of the operating company, right? So if you could make, but everyone would do that, right? If everyone could just make their company more profitable, you would just go,
Yeah.
making the company more profitable. Sounds easy, right? So you're in this scenario, you're limited by the profitability of the operating company for getting more Bitcoin. Okay, so if you could make the operating company more profitable, you could generate more Bitcoin if you combined Bitcoin mining and operating company. Okay, and the next
Gotcha.
scenario would be, so that just leads you up to
Oh,
going, okay,
wait, back up one. So
uh-huh,
just the takeaway or the main point is you'll always get Bitcoin for your cost to mine.
yeah. So your
Your
cost
cost
to
to mine.
mine is your electric bill. So you're generating expenses in the Bitcoin mining, your electric bill, your overhead, and all that for the. But if you don't have an operating company, the only option you have to pay for that is to sell the Bitcoin to pay for your operating expenses.
And the higher your operating profits are, the more Bitcoin it can mine for the
Exactly.
same.
Yep.
Okay, so if that operating company was 100%,
Yeah.
now
Then
you're
you'd get
getting basically two Bit. No, are you getting two
no,
Bitcoin?
you'd get a free Bitcoin basically,
A
right?
free Bitcoin. There you
Yeah.
go. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah. Okay.
and so the next deal is, well, if that's the case, your only chance to get more Bitcoin with adding an operating company would be to scale up the operating company, like a franchise 1, franchise 2, franchise 3, right? And but then you have the physical world as limitations, like got to buy another piece of real estate, got to buy, more management. Now I got more things. I need middle management. I need all kinds of
More
things, right?
employees. Yeah.
Right, more employees and stuff like that, right? But it's still more profitable than just mining the Bitcoin because there is an operating company that you can scale up, right? The thing is, the Bitcoin mining company is more profitable than your operating company. So, what
So you
you
want
might
to shove as much from the operating company into the Bitcoin
into the mining
company.
company, right? And if you combine them together, now you've got something that's way better. It's just orders of magnitude better. But to scale that idea up is hard with an operating company because you got the physical world limitations, right? All right, so the next one would be your challenge is scale, right? But if you use digital transformation as scale, meaning an app, someone doesn't have to walk through a door, start another site. You just use software to scale. Well, you can infinitely scale. Well, so if I can infinitely scale, then my amount of my profitability going up, I can cover more costs in Bitcoin mining, right? So that would be how to look from a 30,000 foot view on how to look at a Bitcoin mining company, and what they're missing is an operating company. So we're going to run through MicroStrategies real quick. So MicroStrategies takes a different approach, though. So what they do is they issue bonds or issue stocks to buy Bitcoin, right? And they issue a bunch of it. So they might have, they've probably seen they had a $42 billion issuance that they've been issuing billions of dollars at a time. And right now in 2025, that makes a lot of sense at $100,000 Bitcoin. So if you issued $10 billion at $100,000 Bitcoin price, you could get 100,000 BTC. But at 200,000, you'd only get 50,000. At 500,000, you'd only get 20,000. And at $1 million price of Bitcoin, you only get 1,000, right? So as the price of Bitcoin starts going up, it becomes tougher and tougher to acquire a quantity of Bitcoin because the inflation of the dollar is working against you, right? You got a deflationary asset, but an inflating dollar, and you're buying the Bitcoin, pushing the price up, and you're buying it by, the truckload. But you're working against yourself. As you push the price up, it becomes harder and harder for you to buy the same quantity. You can issue the same amount of dollars, but you're getting less and less and less. So let me graph that out. So in the next slide, what that kind of looks like in orange here is the issuance versus an operating company. And so the MicroStrategies is the orange line. As you push that price up, see how that line starts flattening off, right? It becomes harder and harder to get more as the price gets higher and higher and higher. And so it doesn't matter if you just keep issuing 10 billion, 10 billion, 10 billion, and the price keeps climbing because you're doing it. You're almost like pushing like a stone uphill. So let's go to the next slide. Okay. So both of the problems between MicroStrategies and Marathon is neither one of them have an operating company to generate the profits to buy the Bitcoin. They're both using a different strategies. The miner is saying, hey, I'm just going to mine it, but you have overhead and you have expenses and you have to sell some of the Bitcoin. Well, that's how Bitcoin enters the marketplace. You got a miner that mines it, and the electricity is so expensive, he's like, well, I got to sell some of it to just get it into the marketplace. Well, then MicroStrategies is like, hey, I got this great idea. I'm going to issue a bunch of bonds and stocks. But as the price comes up, it becomes harder and harder to buy as much because you need more and more money to buy the same quantity. So those two entities, although they're great options, they just don't have the benefit of an operating company. So let's take the next slide.
So Justin, going back to like our corporate owners as an example, the corporate owners who, let's say they have a gutter company that could pay their electric bill,
right? Now
can keep
is twice as profitable, right?
Because they can keep that Bitcoin and never have to sell it.
Never have to sell it on their balance sheet. And now with the FASB rules, your accountant can recognize the value of that Bitcoin on your balance sheet. Now the health of your company has all these assets on there, which now your company can get access to leverage, right? And that's the next slide here is leverage. So what if the operating company, though, itself was the leverage? And we're going to get into what I mean by that in a minute. So the next one, you hit the thing, but it didn't. Oh, okay, there we go. It took a minute on my screen to switch. Sorry. Okay. So in this little process early on, I built this slide that was like 1, 2, 3, 4. You had the commodity, you had the refinery, and then I had the product, and then the refined product in there. MicroStrategies is only one. They can't complete the loop because they're just the refined product. They're not the Bitcoin itself, right? They're the refined product. They're the issuance of. They satisfy a thing in the market for selling off volatility. They are a refined Bitcoin product. And Marathon is basically just the processor of the raw commodity. And neither one of them, because they don't have an operating company, can't complete the loop. They can't recycle capital, right? And so that leads us to the next thing of the Bitcoin-backed mining bank, revolutionizing lending with an overfunded Bitcoin-backed loan. And what we're going to look at is how to recycle capital. So let me introduce you to that. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to digitally transform lending with the highest performing asset in the world. So just like, all the Magnificent Seven digitally transforms book, music, intelligence, all that. And Bitcoin is the digital transformation of capital. One step beyond that, would be lending of the capital, right? And so that is where that internal leverage of an operating company comes in. And so now we're going to take a look at what that looks like. Okay, so this is that same example, but if the operating company was a bank. Okay, so the profits from the bank produce enough money to pay for the expenses in the Bitcoin. So you get the full Bitcoin. But the bank does something more than that. It makes a yield on the Bitcoin, which is why the green bar is above the Bitcoin over there, right? It's Bitcoin plus, right? Okay, so the additional amount of it, Bitcoin is the profit to the bank, which pays for the cost in the Bitcoin, and you start forming this infinite loop right here. Is like, well, if I can produce the Bitcoin at zero cost and then I can lend the Bitcoin at a profit, then the profits from the Bitcoin allow me to mine more Bitcoin, and you start just building this loop going around right there, right? Okay, so let's go to the next one. And so what we did is we took a commodity, and because the bank itself mines the commodity and refines it, that is the marathon component of that, right? But we're not just the micro strategies on the refined part of it. We actually have a operating company in a bank that's scalable with an app that can send the loans out to anywhere in the world. So you don't have a problem with scale. So you can scale this up infinitely. There is no physical barrier to scaling this idea up, right? We just need basically to get the start going. Okay, the next one. So what we've built is that infinite loop. And the way we're going to do it is an app, because we can have as many people in the world come through an app. We don't have to have a location for a bank. See, every bank right now is typically, range bound by a charter, say, hey, I can only do business in this state or, this country or this thing. But when you're an app, you can do business with anywhere, especially with a world currency, right? We're not just the dollar, we're Bitcoin Bank. So you add it to an app and you can lend anywhere. Okay, so now we're going to take a quick look at banking. It's just a quick bank primer real quick. The bank's the only logical choice for the operating company because the bank is the only operating company that can recycle our capital. If we had a donut shop, we could have a profitable donut shop and take the profits from the donut shop and pay the expenses in the Bitcoin. And that would be great. That would be the most profitable donut shop in the world. But as a donut shop, we can't lend the Bitcoin that we created. We just run this linear thing. We just stop. It was just a profitable donut shop is all we are, right? But if your operating company is a bank, you can complete the circle because now we can lend the Bitcoin that we mined and make a profit off of it. So let's look at how a bank works real quick. Okay? We're going to keep this real simple. We're going to use $100 million as banking capital in our start just because it's easy math. Okay? If you have $100 million in capital in the bank, you can have 10x in the amount of deposits, which is $1 billion. So you can have $1 billion worth of depositors. Make sense? That's
Yep.
how it works, right? Now, of that $1 billion, you can lend out $900 million of it and keep $100 million as cash as float. That's the requirements for banking. There's some unhealthy banks that are down in 6 and 7%, and there's some overfunded ones in the 10, 12%, but the rule of thumb is 10%. The regulators are going to say, hey, we want you to be at 10%, right? So that's a good rule of thumb to say that's where you're going to be. So on that $900 million, though, you're going to charge interest on all those loans. And we just use 7% in here, okay? So on $900 million, 7% interest generates $63 million of profit to the bank, okay? But we're a Bitcoin mining bank. That $63 million paid all the expenses for the production of $63 million worth of Bitcoin. Well, that generated us 2,520 Bitcoin in a year, or roughly 252. Is that 252, Logan?
Yeah.
252 million dollars. Okay, in value of Bitcoin. But we're going to look at year 2 now because we are a bank. Next year, we have $252 million more as capital in the bank, which we get to leverage by 10x, meaning that we can take $3.52 billion in deposits, lend out $3.168 billion, okay, which generates $221 million in interest, which offsets $220 million in production of Bitcoin, that produces in that year 8,840 Bitcoin. And at the price at 100,000 per Bitcoin, that's $884 million in 1 year.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. And we'll end it in year 3.
Because you're already worth $1 billion.
Right? Because in year 3, the bank has $1.24 billion in capital, is making $10.2 billion worth of loans at $9.2 billion and 7% interest, has $642 million worth of profit that it can offset in mining, generating $3.54 billion in Bitcoin. Okay. Now go to the next one. So I think you can see where that leads after a few years, right? That was 3 years. Right?
I can tell you, it leads to I never want to IPO.
Right, exactly, right? So now let's go to the next one, back to this screen right here. You see how this strategy, even though MicroStrategies it starts off winning by a significant portion, as they start trying to push that rock uphill, well, we start getting 10x leverage, though, because of our operating company, right? We're out leveraging them. But here's the thing. We own the Bitcoin. We have full exposure to the Bitcoin. We didn't use the debt to buy Bitcoin. We actually have the Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right? That we're lending and getting the leverage on and going out. So our graph intersects MicroStrategies given enough time, right? So if you were to look at a way, well, what horse is going to win? Well, their horse is winning right now because they have 470,000 Bitcoin head start. Well, in year 3, if we have $3.5 billion, well, it's going to be harder and harder for them to buy more and more Bitcoin over time when it's 500,000, a million. But we're growing and growing and growing, right? So that we intersect with that idea, with this idea. And it's because we can recycle the Bitcoin. They can't recycle the Bitcoin. Their Bitcoin sits on their balance sheet, and they need the growth of the Bitcoin and new investors to buy Bitcoin. Well, we recycle the Bitcoin that we mined into more Bitcoin. Okay.
Yeah.
So now, on the next slide, you can see that's how you build the next multi-trillion-dollar market cap company, is that you recycle that. So that's where I asked the question in the beginning, what's the most profitable bank in the world worth? A lot. That's how we got from $150 million to a $15 billion to a $1 trillion market cap company, is you, in a very short period of time, you're taking $150 million and turning it into billions of dollars. Well, that is that goose that lays the golden egg, right? What is the goose worth? Well, if it was one goose, you would start going, well, what's the lifespan of a goose? But we're breeding the geese. Right?
Yeah.
We're multiplying them, right?
The whole flock of them out there.
Okay, so this is the next part here. So
okay, wait, back up just a quick sec. So have you ever found out what the average return is for bank loans? I mean, between credit card, houses, cars,
that's
boats,
where I got
whatever.
7% is like right
Okay.
now you would kind of pick that 7% range right there.
Okay, good. I think that's about right. The other side of that is, that any day or night that you haven't lent out your money,
Yeah.
you can lend it to the
Yeah, you just partner.
Federal Reserve
Yeah.
for like, I mean, so yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
that
you're
story.
just
There's
making
always money being made by
there's
all
always
that.
money being made, right? It's just you're in this is going to so that part was insane, Dan, but this is really insane, okay? So
And even stop that.
okay.
All right.
So all right. So where does the demand come from? Why would anyone want to use the Bitcoin backed mining bank? So okay, next one. Well, what's the product of a bank is a loan, right? So what we got to do is the next one. A traditional bank's limited by the profitability of the bank because their product they're selling is a commodity. So one bank, if he wants to raise, one bank wants to raise their interest rates, well, they can't because the next bank will just undercut them because they're dealing with a commodity in money. So they can't push the rate up anymore. They'll just lose customers. They they are controlled by the market and the commodity of cash. All right.
Terms are their only commodity.
That's it, right? But what if the
It's either
bank,
time or percentage. Yep.
yeah. So, but what if the bank is the producer of the commodity and you have your own product that no one else has? Well, you're not constrained by the market anymore, right? Okay. So here's the thing lending hasn't changed in 1,000 years. So, how can lending be changed? Well, we changed the idea of money, right? All right. So we introduced the overfunded Bitcoin-backed mining loan, a lending product built for the future. Okay, so this would be a traditional loan, and here's my student loan example, where a
Hey, by the
student
way,
just
what's go back to the
uh-huh.
name of that? What's a good acronym we could come up with?
Yeah,
The
the off the
OFBBL.
OFBBO. The OFBBO. The OFBB.
There you go.
Okay, the lending scenario, this is just the traditional loan, right? A kid comes in, says, "Hey, I need 25,000." Bank says, "Okay, give you 7% interest on a 20-year loan." Student loans are a little unusual in that they can defer the payments for while they're going to school and they pick up payments, when they graduate, right? So in this little scenario, kid got $25,000, starts paying it when he graduates, and he's paying $172 a month for the next 20 years. And so in his total loan, he spends $41,273. That's just how lending's been done for thousands of years. Okay, but why would the kid come to us and say, "Hey, I'm going to get $25,000 for school, and we're going to charge him 14% interest rate"? Sounds stupid. Why would he do that? Well, it's because we have this overfunded Bitcoin-backed mining loan. So we're not only going to give him $25,000 in cash, we're going to put $5,000 worth of Bitcoin in a 3-signature wallet and $5,000 of Bitcoin in mining machines. So his total loan is $35,000 instead of $25,000. So anyone would be like, "Well, that's crazy. I'm going to pay 14% on $35,000." Well, let's see how this works out. Let's see who this is best for. The traditional loan versus our loan. So, long story short, by the end of year 5, he has a loan balance of $67,390 versus his $41,000 doing it the other way, but his wallet's worth $68,000 and he never made a payment. Right? So the kid walks away and he has the college education and $1,000 in his pocket, but the smarter thing is because he got this loan from a Bitcoin-backed bank, the loan officer at his bank would say, "Hey, instead of selling that Bitcoin and paying the loan off, why don't you just recapitalize the Bitcoin, pay the loan off, and now you have $68,000 worth of debt against your Bitcoin, and you've got to lock it up for X period of time. But if he keeps that over the rest of his life, that is his retirement plan." He'll only ever owe $68,000, and every time he makes a payment, he's freeing up, $300-$400 worth of Bitcoin inside of there. He is buying his own Bitcoin by paying off his loan,
His loan.
and it's going up in value, right? Now,
And he's paying it off at 68, even if Bitcoin was a million.
exactly, right? And he keeps everything else, right? So even though we charged him double the going rate for this, we're the most profitable bank in the world because we can charge a crazy amount of interest. But what did that interest do for us? We mined Bitcoin with it, right? The
Right.
profits, we mined the Bitcoin. So at the very beginning of that loan, go back one slide, Logan. Remember when we gave him $5,000 of Bitcoin? There was zero cost to the bank for that $5,000 worth of Bitcoin because we charged 14% interest on the rate for this type of loan. We're producing that Bitcoin at zero cost. Well, once we lent it, then we're making 14% on something that we already produced.
For nothing.
For nothing. Right? Okay. But then on top of that, when he plugged that mining machine in, we're making the electricity rate off of that mining machine and the fees and all of that. And he doesn't have to worry about it because he started this and he's just going to let it go. And we've got it. So go 2 more slides. So the student owns the asset and he can re-leverage it, and the bank increases its profitability on a product that it already produced. Right? So now you get to that same slide again. What's the most profitable bank in the world worth? Right? That produces its own money, that lends the money it produces, infinitely scalable, unlimited demand for the product, and money that has a limited supply. Right? That's the infinite loop that we've created.
And let me make sure my
That's
mind.
the end of that slideshow, and we can go back to different slides and look at them.
Now, make sure my mind is capturing this properly. Going back to the fractional reserve, the bank needs to lend out $3.9 billion somewhere anyway.
Correct. Yeah.
I
So
mean,
we're
it's in the lending business, so to speak. So
yes. We
it
need
has
to
to.
lend. Yeah.
And if you can lend at 14 rather than 7,
Right.
you've just obviously that's a no-brainer.
But what
And
you're
then
lending on is something that you produced.
yes,
We didn't have to go out and buy the Bitcoin.
right.
Right.
And until let me think this through. Until he pays off his loan, that's technically our Bitcoin
Our
growing
Bitcoin.
as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's we've got it collateralized. And when he does pay it off, he's just going to use another loan to pay it off. That like we're getting paid out, right?
Yeah.
So we're getting all of it back, right? We're getting it the Bitcoin that we mined for free plus 14% interest.
Yes.
Right?
Times 3.9 billion or whatever.
Yeah, right. Okay. But then the 14% interest was our profit to go mine more Bitcoin, which we turned around and lent out in, we could do house loans and any type of loan. That was just one scenario, right? But here's the reason I picked the student loan is because if we pick student loans, FHA loans, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, VA, USD agri loans, all the loans that are guaranteed by the government, we have never put any of our money in the bank at risk. The federal government backs it all, right? And the over collateralized part we produced.
So okay. So could a guy get let's just say a 30-year mortgage, never make a payment, and in 30 years
yeah, we
pay
would
out?
make him make a payment. Like in that scenario, that student loan is,
Short
a little
term.
weird because you could defer the payment, but
Oh, that's right.
right, but you could run that same exact thing on a house. But what's happening though is let's use $100,000 house, even though that's not realistic, but let's say $100,000 house, and we handed them $120,000, right? 20,000, 10,000 in Bitcoin and 10,000 in mining. Well, as he's paying the payment, well, the Bitcoin and the production of the Bitcoin are stacking up in that wallet, which he can't take it out, but it's helping him pay off the house
Pay it off. Yeah.
right? And then when he pays it off faster, what's going to happen is we're going to issue him a new loan, which cashes us out and captures, the full return, and we get him another loan. You've got a customer for life. Like, where are they going to
Oh,
go?
yeah.
I mean,
Right,
that's
right,
why I was
right.
saying start with college kids, because then you're going to get a house, you're going to get a car, you're going to get all kinds of personal loans on top of that. They're going to stack Bitcoin and reloan against that, and
So
use
let's
collateral
take
like that.
the student housing guy. Let's just say, or student loan guy. Let's say he either defaults or dies.
Yes. Yeah.
We can't get hurt.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's
I
impossible.
mean, at the very least, we're getting
The
our
25,000
14%
that we
return.
lent out, the government guaranteed us the 25,000 on the loan. Well, the Bitcoin right there, we were charging them 14% interest on our Bitcoin. We would get the Bitcoin back plus 14%
Right.
interest, right? So we have zero exposure
And
for
we
it,
did it with fractional reserve money, so it didn't really even
right?
cost us anything.
It didn't cost us anything, right? Because depositors are putting money in that we're lending and making a return off of.
Okay, so I got this harebrained idea right now, and just tell me if I'm way off. How would you like to buy a car that you never have to pay for?
Yes, yeah, you could do that, right? And you could
You could
just
do a 4-year car loan and default.
yes, exactly. And you don't really care, right? Because the car, think about it, the risky thing to the bank in a car loan is that the car's depreciating, and
Yeah,
can you do the calculation of the depreciation and how quickly they're paying the loan at? The bank is at risk in that scenario.
yeah,
You would be much better off as a lender doing it this way, saying, hey, you got a $50,000 car, but we're going to give you 60, 5 into Bitcoin and 5 into this. And, you default. Well, we got the car, the Bitcoin, and all of that. And they're just making, another $50 a month payment. But you could also, because of that, charge a higher interest rate too.
well, yeah, because it's just a cumulative rate.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not like it's coming out of pocket.
Right.
I mean, eventually it does, but
Yeah, the higher you charge, basically, the longer, you're just pushing that out. Do you give them 7 years, 8 years? That's what's happening if you charge 18%. You're pushing the date out is what you're doing,
yeah, sure.
you know.
But let's say you got a young couple, they can't afford a $300 a month car payment. They
Yeah.
could afford a $100 a month car payment.
Right. You could size it.
Who
Yeah.
who cares?
Who
Hey,
cares?
you
Yeah.
can get a $50,000 car. Give us $100 a month,
Right.
and then in
Exactly.
5 years, don't pay us back.
We don't pay us back. We don't really care at
Well,
that point. We just want the Bitcoin that we produce
oh
and
my
the interest
gosh.
rate. Right. So, right.
Yeah,
This is
talk,
this
you're exactly right. How do you change lending forever? I
well,
mean, how do you change? Yeah,
the reason this works is because you're a Bitcoin bank and you value the asset because you mined the asset, and we could just liquidate every time we mine it. We could just liquidate the asset right then. But what we're trying to do is get a yield on the asset that we
yeah,
mined. And how do you do that? You have to lend it out, right? And so,
yeah,
well, we want to lend that asset out, but we're getting the benefit of the fractional reserve for that cash portion of it to go make that
yeah.
yield, right? We're getting a
Okay.
90% like
So,
leverage.
okay. So then my next question is, why not lend them more?
Yeah, we could, right?
I
And I
mean,
think that's
let's say I come and I say, hey, I've got some cash flow. I want to buy this car, but I also want to save for my retirement.
yeah,
Okay. Instead of lending you 50, we're going to lend you 100,
right, exactly, right.
you know?
Yeah, I
And
think we
now
could.
you
Yeah, you'd have that
You'd have
clientele, right? I mean,
you'd have everybody in the world trying to
that's
come to you.
that's what I'm saying is like if you change the lending product, everyone in the world is going to come to you. What is the value of that bank? It's infinite, right? So what
Exactly.
is the limiting factor in this is how much Bitcoin can you produce to lend? Right? Now
Yeah,
you start
right.
getting into like, can I produce that much Bitcoin? If you give me $9 billion, can I produce enough Bitcoin to match those loans? Right? Well, then
Yeah,
you start
yeah.
going, well, I think I have to buy Marathon. Right? How much are you worth? Right? So
Yeah, I
because
mean,
that
we could
fractional reserve is what is doing that heavy lifting, it's leverage inside of the company.
exactly. I mean, we literally could buy Marathon,
Yes,
and we'd be more profitable than them day one.
way more profitable than them. They're like because they're selling the Bitcoin, right? Or and the
Yeah,
only other way to keep the Bitcoin is they issue shares like MicroStrategy and get investor money to come in, so they don't have to sell it. But you can only issue shares so often. We have when you're lending, you're every single day someone's doing business with you. I mean, we're not even calculating the fees for bank. Like, this is so crazy, Dan. We're not. I'm only calculating the 7% from the loans. I'm not talking about all the fees
yeah,
and all the other stuff that you would generate from that goes in there. It just makes the number even higher and even crazier. That's why you just stop at this higher level thing. And if someone says, "Well, what if?" and I'm like, "Well, what if I actually calculated all the numbers?"
yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and I work with so many doctors and dentists who take 10 years of throwing everything they got into their student loan. They got
Yeah,
$400,000 in student loans.
yeah.
Can you imagine telling a doctor, go be a doctor and you never have to make us a payment because we got this figured out?
The 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 line would be so big that
Yeah.
I mean,
We could go to pick a school, Princeton,
yeah,
Harvard,
yeah,
and just say, hey, you want an exclusive for
right, yeah,
all
yeah,
your students?
exactly, right. You just have, I mean, it's insane the ability of
This,
what this product would do because the bank values Bitcoin. The problem right now is you go to Chase and they don't want to touch Bitcoin. So they're definitely not going to mine Bitcoin, right? They're
right.
getting them to even accept it as collateral. Well, the reason we would accept the Bitcoin at 100% value of collateral is because we produced it and we can
Yeah.
liquidate it, right?
And it
Which
cost us nothing.
didn't cost us anything.
Jeez. Okay. All right.
So
Well,
150 million isn't going to be hard. It's like, listen, guys.
man, I know it's just not. Well, okay. So doctor these up, whatever you think else
Yeah,
you need to do, and then send them over to me.
yeah,
I'll look
yeah,
at them. I'll see if
yeah,
there's anything I would
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
tweak, and then we could have this out.
Quick.
Well, obviously, we want to get it in the hands of guys that can help us buy the bank.
Right, right,
you know,
right. And
here's what I'm afraid of. We can't buy a bank fast enough.
I know that's the thing is I think it's going to take longer to like execute the deal of the bank but the way I see it is the deploying of the 150 million. What's going to happen is we would just go straight into Bitcoin, right? So it takes off all the
Yeah.
counterparty risk of that. And we don't even have to deploy into the mining right now. We have time to get the facility up. Cost $2 million. Great. Well, we don't need like just heck. We might get the lift of enough Bitcoin to offset the
Yeah.
cost of the facility at that
Yeah,
point in time.
exactly.
So next month went up and paid for the facility. Great.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So like bringing it on board and starting the bank process because if the bank process is going to take us 12 to 24 months somewhere in that range to we got to enter into a deal, agree to be sold, negotiate the deal, then get Steve and Jason on board in the deal, right? start building these products so we can lend them. There's no reason we can't build that product and that bank that we're targeting start lending this way. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, they just need the product developed, right?
Well, do you think we've got, I know we've got some, but do you think FDIC hoops are going to be huge for this? Or did
The way
Jim give
we went
you
out, the
any
way we went
indication that this?
yeah, the way we went out with Jim is kind of like this. The way it would look structurally is there would be a holding company at top. The bank is a separate entity already, right? And so that holding company would enter into a contract to purchase the bank, but it would be remaining as a separate entity. And then the mining company would be a third company right there. And what we would do is get the bank to sponsor the mining company for the app so that we could start developing the software to connect the bank to the app in between and talk to each other. And all that is the bank is got a new fintech provider to provide services over here. And so
Mm,
we're developing those two things as that process rolls out, but the whole time we're mining. And the whole
yeah,
time that we're
exactly.
mining and price of Bitcoin going up is giving the bank more power to lend. Because once we complete it, we're just going to inject a bunch of cash over there and go, let's go make a bunch of loans. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's like, so that's
Well,
what
I
I mean.
just
Like, we
wonder.
need a lots of Grant Cardones to like your $150 million projects. We need a lot of those.
Yeah, well, see, and that's the other thing I was thinking is that, I was thinking, well, how much can you really loan? But it's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot, right? Because
And think about it 10 years from now.
we're
I
going to need
mean,
everyone. We're going to have like rules like we need everyone in the world to bank with us, and everyone will want to bank with us because we're giving them these crazy loans. So the more
yeah.
money that comes in as deposits is the more money that we can hand right back out, right?
Well, and not that you want to promote, you know, what do they call that? What, anyway, but you really don't care what their credit score is.
Yeah, right. It's you'd have a whole new way of looking and judging, like you know,
I mean, all of a sudden, a guy who had a great business, it went south, he went
yeah,
bankrupt. He can't get a loan anywhere, but we know he's a great guy, smart
right,
guy, gonna be on his
right.
way again. There'd be no reason why we can't.
Think about
Oh
the
my
small
gosh.
business loans, the SBA loans. Those are backed by the government. You could get all kinds of
Yeah.
small business guys. There's you could have different credit risk profiles for all. You could take people, X amount of people here, X amount of people here.
Yeah.
You know, and then the other component about it is making this type of loan into the Bitcoin community. There isn't anything like this. So then you
No.
could take Bitcoiners and say, hey, this is a safe place if you want to get yield on your Bitcoin because the loans that we're making are backed by the government.
Yeah. Right.
We're making a ton of loans, but they're backed by the government. You have like zero risk because we're out mining your production, right? It's not like we just like have a pile of Bitcoin that we had to use people's money to go buy. No, we're constantly increasing our Bitcoin.
Our arsenal. Well, and SBA could be looser
Right.
because there really would never be at risk.
And so when I was going over this with Steve, and he was the one who's like, think about the lending, how a traditional banker looks at a loan, and when they say, okay, well, what's the collateral that you're providing? Well, in a student loan, look at a student loan. They provide
Nothing.
no collateral at all, right? It's just that the government is going to back it, okay? So you're essentially giving them the collateral, but it didn't cost you anything to give them the collateral. But then your collateral is actually helping them out to pay the loan,
Yeah.
right? So you've ensured that they've paid the loan. They're not going to default. It's almost impossible for them to default.
Oh my gosh. This is just nuts. I love it.
So
Okay. Well, yeah, I know it's late where you're at, and you
yeah.
probably
So
had
what do you
dinner.
think the step is? I'm gonna send you this presentation. Do you want it in?
Yeah, I mean, if you think it's ready to take a
Yeah,
whack at for me,
yeah.
great. Let's send it over, and then honestly, geez, Sean,
I think we should
showing
show it
this
to
to
Sean.
Sean,
I mean,
he's going to
Charles
be
is,
like, how much money do you need? How fast? Let's
yeah,
go.
yeah,
And then adding Kirk into, okay, now Kirk, how do
right,
you, we just bought $150 million worth of Bitcoin,
right.
you know,
What? Okay, this is what we got to do with it. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
let's make sure that these investors,
Yeah,
I don't know,
see,
I don't
that's
think we have,
the stop with them, right? Is to say, Kurt, can you come up with a plan if we got these guys come in? We need a story like you make them feel comfortable that you know your 150 million came in. We just bought Bitcoin, just like Michael Saylor, but ours is gonna like 1,000x on top of it.
well, yeah,
That's
because when you explain where their investment went and oh my gosh,
yeah,
this is, this
yeah,
is awesome.
yeah.
So cool, cool.
All right,
All right.
sounds good.
That's
So
that.
tomorrow we'll get on a
Yep.
little early.
Yeah.
Okay.
Show me how to
Yeah.
do it.